So, what's my story? I ask myself this question often. I was born in Gary, Indiana, around the same time and near the same place as another baby, Michael Jackson. My parents were displaced, both having lived in two countries growing up and leaving home at ridiculously young ages. Their ability to adjust and adapt all their lives had a profound influence on me, whether culturally or genetically, I'm not sure. What is culture and what is diversity? Compared to many, I had an abundance of both. Being born an army brat afforded me the opportunity to travel at a very young age. I attended first grade in three different schools: a small town, Minnesota, followed by a Mexican border city, El Paso, and finally in an army base in Trier, Germany. Talk about diversity. My parents often spoke Spanish at home, and in Germany they learned German quite readily and frequently entertained friends who did not speak any English at all. On the weekends, we traveled around Europe, befriending new people, eating unfamiliar food, and I became comfortable understanding only some of what I heard and finding ways to communicate with new friends. On my seventh birthday, a German couple, Ingeborg and Wolfgang, arrived at our house and insisted on taking me away for a while. Reluctantly, my parents agreed, and off we went to parts unknown. At a fancy jewelry store, I had my ears pierced, to the later surprise of my parents. My relationships have also been diverse. My first serious boyfriend was an identical twin, bisexual, and a ballet dancer. His unique perspectives on life and religion influenced mine. My first husband was first-generation American, on both sides, German and Japanese. He was a child prodigy, classical violinist, whose father had fought in World War II and brought home a Japanese bride. After my first marriage ended, I became engaged to a native New Yorker, African-American man who was an avid skier and photographer. My current husband is from an Irish Catholic Boston working-class family and has quite a colorful past. As you might imagine, cultural differences are not novelties in my life. I have been programmed to enjoy and embrace diversity. I have never experienced perfect equity, only inequity in variations. I sometimes feel that gender inequity is actually getting more common in my lifetime. I recall the empowerment of women during the 1970s when the ERA amendment peaked in popularity. I remember the upsurge in women's independence after the invention of the birth control pill and the legalization of abortions. Back in that time, when my dad retired from the Army, he stayed home and cooked for the family, and my mother was finally able to get away from housekeeping and raising children. It seemed right, and I was not aware of any Mr. Mom label at the time. The military, on the other hand, had its gender biases. When I applied to join the Navy at age 17, I did exceedingly well on the IQ assessments, outscoring the male candidate who was taking them with me. He signed on that very day. The recruiter took me aside and informed me that he couldn't send women to sea, so I would have to wait about a year. Needless to say, at age 17, I didn't have the patience to wait, and my career as an air traffic controller ended before it began. After a career in IT, I was laid off during the early 2000s recessions, and my job went overseas. When reaching out to friends, I found that a large group of us had been laid off. All women, all middle-aged, like me. The men managed to hang on to their jobs, so we women met weekly to network. It was obvious to us that our age group and gender profile suffered the most during economic downturns. When I first started working with people with disabilities, I expected that I would quickly tire of the job. I didn't think I had the patience to deal with slow learners. This group of people opened up my eyes to a new kind of diversity and inequity. One of my first student customers was a man in his late 30s. He had been quite popular in his community. He worked at an African-American barbershop and played basketball for fun on the weekends. He was attractive and personable and led a comfortable and happy life. And then, when I met him, he used a motorized wheelchair, constantly adjusting his thin body and thick glasses. In a scratchy voice, he explained to me that he could no longer be a barber due to his recent acquisition of multiple sclerosis. So he came back to school to try and find another way to make a living. He had no familiarity with technology, nor had he previously any interest in it. This man had contracted MS and become severely disabled within 6 months. The psychological trauma alone would have been enough to hinder most people from leaving their house, let alone attempting to go to school. We were starting from ground zero with technology. His hands were so uncoordinated that we used dictation software, and he didn't even know how to log onto a computer or surf the net. As his voice became less consistent, we switched to using an alternate input system, which allowed him to move his head in order to guide the pointer on the screen. Neither of these systems worked all the time, and it was depressing to see how little actual progress he could make under the constraints of a college-level class with such limitations. As time went on, I came to the realization that he would probably never finish school, that he was isolated, and that he was becoming discouraged. I had to change my tactics. What he needed was to find another way to be a functioning part of society. So I taught him to use Facebook. It was quite a struggle, technically, and he had no friends at first. But eventually he became very active in that arena, which gave him the motivation to learn the dictation software more extensively and to start journaling. After this encounter, I began to understand that many people with disabilities were actually of a superior breed of human beings who could overcome incredible obstacles if they were engaged correctly. By allowing the student to lead me in the direction he needed to go for his own growth and recovery, I was able to guide him to a successful outcome. I was amazed and awed by the sheer stamina which I witnessed. This was my new calling. This is where my life of diversity could come in handy. I could work towards creating a more equitable world to house these superhuman individuals. I had the unique perspective of being able to understand what it was like to make my way in unfamiliar surroundings. I am able to show others, such as faculty members, how they too can guide these unusual beings. We need people with different abilities to lead the way for those of us who are so dependent on our average brains and fully functional bodies. We need them to teach us what humanity is all about and how to learn to adapt to our unpredictable futures. It may be dark and inhospitable there, and we must all learn to face it with whatever we have, and with gratitude and grace.